Hello and a good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are around the world, and welcome to today's Postgrad webinar service. Today we're joined by Loughborough University London campus and specifically Dr. Ida Telebasic, who is Senior Lecturer Programme Director of the Institute for Creative Futures. Now, just before we go any further, a reminder today's session is live. It is today, the Monday, the 9th of March, 2026. So these might be subject to change. Some of the info and facts that you might see over the next few months if you are watching on demand. You won't be able to ask questions on demand. So webinars at postgradsolutions.com is where you need to fire them towards. And if you are watching live today, whether it's on social media, whether it's on Zoom, please say hi. Say hi from where you are. Ask any questions, and I'm sure Ida will get back to you towards the end. But for now, Ida, over to you. I'll be back towards the end. I will be controlling the screen, and I'll be keeping an eye on the questions also.
Great. Thank you, Gareth. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, to where you're joining from. Really glad to have you with us. I am Ida, as Gareth said, and I'm a senior lecturer in the Institute for Creative Futures, specifically in the field of service design innovation. And I'm also the program director of the program that you're interested in, which is the user experience and service design. My expertise is mainly in service design, innovation, and strategy, and I've been exploring design-driven entrepreneurship over the past years, and I'm also working as a co-investigator on the Becoming Regenerative research project and co-leading the Becoming Regenerative lab here at Loughborough University in London. I'm also working on a project called the Food Futuring Research Project, which is really exploring ecological citizenship and stewardship in the region of Hertfordshire. And as you can see here, there are links to all of those projects, so please do have a look. And one of the projects that I've been involved in over the past few years is called SIZE, which was looking at innovation support programs across Southern Africa, so across 5 Southern African countries, looking at impact, mapping impact case studies and innovation intermediaries across the region. Here at the Institute, I teach on 2 modules. One is called Service Design Innovation, and the other one is Service Design Strategy. And we will look at some of the things that these modules look at specifically because they're very core to the program a little bit further on. And here I'm attaching as well my LinkedIn profile if you would like to connect as well. Next, please. Just to introduce as well our Institute Director, Professor Jo Taki, who is a Professor of Media and Creative Industries. She is leading the Institute at the moment, and you can also find information about her work here on the slides and also on our Loughborough University website. So, what is unique about Loughborough? As you may know or may not know, we are a university that is based in the Midlands with a campus in London. So Loughborough University London is where the Institute for Creative Futures is based. And we are ranked in the top 10 of the major league tables. We have an outstanding student experience and groundbreaking research, with over 90% of our work ranked as world leading. We really care about students' talent and exposing them to different opportunities, which I will talk a bit more in detail as we move along. But here it's important to say one of the things we really pride ourselves is in connecting students with industry partners, networks, and different opportunities to unlock different potential. And another thing worth saying here is that we're an exclusively postgraduate campus, so we have only master's and PhD programs on this campus. Why London? So here as well, you can see that we are based in Here East, which is a thriving hub for innovation and creativity, and we are surrounded by really extraordinary partners in industry leaders such as Ford, Sports Interactive, Plexel, and others. We're also part of the East Bank, which is now post-Olympics become really one of the UK's newest cultural quarters, and it's home to a lot of interesting cultural and innovative organizations. We're also part of the 2012 Olympics legacy, so the whole area here is basically where the Olympics were held. So there's a lot of interesting things going on around education, business ecosystems, and really a thriving community that is exploring collaboration and innovation in different ways. Another thing worth mentioning is that we are ranked the world's top student city. So London, of course, is a fantastic place to come and learn and also explore everything that London has to offer. So apart from obviously being in the East Bank, being in London, I don't need to say much here, but of course it's worth mentioning that we are really benefiting from the thriving interdisciplinary and intercultural community in London, with many different people coming from all over the world. And our staff is also very diverse, which also adds to the flavor and to the richness of what we offer to our students. Next, please. So in the London campus, we have 6 institutes, as you can see here on the slide, and that is quite a unique thing that we are very proud of. So we have Institute for Creative Futures among digital technologies, diplomacy and international affairs, international management, entrepreneurship, and sport business. And this is really something that is unique because a lot of our students have opportunities to collaborate with students from other institutes, so working really in a truly interdisciplinary way. Staff also work on interdisciplinary research in this way, and also this really allows us to tap into what is going on, what are the latest trends in each of the different disciplines. I think a lot of our students do come back to us and say they really treasure the fact that it's not just a faculty for one discipline, but they really can take advantage of this unique setting, which you will see as well as I speak a bit more about the program. Next, please. So now specifically diving into the Institute for Creative Futures. So we are the first in the UK for communication and media studies. We are the 4th in the UK for art and design. And the Institute is blending research with cutting-edge postgraduate programs in 3 areas. So design innovation, communication and media, and the creative industries, which is quite, again, a unique combination. And it really prepares students to positively shape social, cultural, economic, and technological futures. And again, being connected to the East Bank, it really provides an amazing creative experience and cultural innovation. So specifically looking at the programs within the Institute, we have 6 programs with 2 that are new. Design and Artificial Intelligence is a new program that is being launched now in September. And User Experience and Service Design is not new. The Service Design Innovation Program has been going on for a number of years now. But what is new is that we are now combining user experience as part of that program. And I will speak a bit more about that as well. So the program that I will speak about today, obviously, is the User Experience and Service Design, which I'm a program director for. So please, of course, direct any questions to me if you have. This is really ideal for people who are looking at how can we create meaningful human-centered solutions. And it's really about driving user-driven experiences within different innovation management processes, applying many different design research methods. Systems thinking is very central to a lot of the work that we do, and really exploring innovation tools to analyze, to prototype in order to deliver impact. So here we also combine strategic service design with creative user experience design. And this is why do we do that? We really want students to foster critical thinking, understanding how do you put together strategic insight to present to a client, and how do you really utilize research skills to activate different types of learning. And as I said, again, we do this with a very strong connection with the industry. So let's have a look. Let's take a closer look at the program according to the semesters. So we have four modules which are compulsory in semester one, and they all add a very interesting blend to the learning journey. So design innovation gives you a kind of one-on-one on what it means to work within design innovation disciplines. User experience and design is a module that will really explore in more detail how do we create user experiences, the interface and the touch points that are important in understanding where the user comes in contact with different services. Service design innovation is also kind of a broader module that looks theoretically from a very kind of systemic lens on where service design plays an important part in shaping organizations, shaping systems, shaping collaborative services, and also shaping future services. And Grand Challenges is also an opportunity for students to work on really big topics, the wicked problems of today, in multidisciplinary teams, engaging really with the SDG, with Sustainable Development Goals and other important lenses. And in semester two, we also have a list of compulsory modules, which is design research, which really sets students, prepares them for their dissertations and how to do research in a very robust and sound way. Within the program, we also have Design for Experiences, which is again a module that really taps deeper into how do we create immersive experiences, different types of creative experiences for our users, because today we are living very much in a experience economy. So we really try and tap into what we can do and understand in that respect. The collaborative project is also a module that, again, allows students to really tap into working with companies. So these are really like live briefs that are brought from the industry for students to work on, again, in interdisciplinary teams. And the dissertation is something that you start in semester two, but it kind of goes all the way across the summer until September, where you get this unique opportunity to really work on something that you feel strongly interested and passionate about. And obviously you have a supervisor to support you in that journey. The thing that is also important to say is the service design strategy is also a module that allows you to explore innovation opportunities within different service sectors. And it's a great module to really tap into explaining different frameworks and different ways in which we can disrupt or critically analyze and critically assess ways in which we can do innovation in different service cases. And I will explain that a little bit more moving forward. And then here we also have another module that we offer students as an optional, which is immersive experiences and creative technologies. And this is really looking at VR, AR, multiverses, and a lot of other exciting things like that. Yeah, and as I mentioned, the dissertation kind of moves into the semester, but into the summer, but starts in semester two. So, having said all that, how do we actually do teaching at Loughborough? How do we teach and learn? So one of the things that we have found that really works well, and our students have given us lots of positive feedback on that, is that we basically have a sprint module format, which means we have 3-week blocks of teaching, which are followed by 1 week of assessment. And this really allows students to take a deeper dive into a specific topic. It allows students to really have focused time on both doing teamwork, but also consolidating all the learning and also consulting all the reading that is integral and part of each of the modules. So we found that in the past we used to run modules in parallel, and now we have basically 3-week blocks where you just have one module, and that really has proven to work very well. It allows students to focus their learning, so you're dedicating your time to one topic, and therefore you're not kind of remaining on the surface, but you're really able to take a deeper dive and concentrate on mastering concepts without distraction. As I've mentioned, a lot of our modules will work with industry partners, whether that's through the collaborative project, as I mentioned, or through internships, or through the fact that we have an amazing network of guest speakers and industry experts who we invite, and they come to our modules to really provide students with the insights and the really juicy details around what it means to work in the industry in service design, what works well, what doesn't work well, and why. So it's really not the perhaps necessarily only the polished version, but a really unique aspect that you don't get to hear about often. And this, in some ways, this format really enables immediate application of knowledge. So it's about really understanding in an intensive manner, how do we apply theory into practice, and how does practice again inform theory. So we also encourage students to expose their work in seminars, in public events, in conferences, and to explore writing opportunities if they so wish with their supervisors. So again, it's an opportunity that students can embrace. So now that you have an understanding a bit about the structure, the institute, the programs, the modules, and how we deliver that, I would like to just give you a brief insight into what is user experience and service design. So services occur when there's a value exchange between a service provider, someone who performs the actual activity that might result in some kind of benefit, and this includes a specific output and involves a certain experience. Whilst on the other hand, we have the user who sees this value in the output, in the experience, or both combined, and is willing to pay for it in exchange for something else that is of equivalent value. So let's just understand what do we mean by that. So here we have an example. Just go back one slide, please. So here we have examples of the bike sharing service, which here on the left we have in London. Here on the right we have an example in China, the OFO system. And what this shows us is that this is basically a product service system design. So it's very different to our regular bikes that we might have in the garage. And what makes them unique is the fact that these products are a means of the service to exist. So these are services that we can access. And obviously here on the left, we see bikes that are in a specific location because there's a docking station, whereas on the right, we have a further development of the service model where they are dockless. So they don't need a docking station per se to be taken or locked, but they can be left anywhere in the city. Next, please. So here we can see examples of product service system design. And here we can see how services are becoming the reason for reconceptualizing products. So products as a means for the service to exist. And obviously we have a lot of examples in this area. I'm just sharing a few of bike sharing, car sharing services, etc. Next, please. So here we can see again other examples. And what this shows us is that the way in which these products are designed are again designed with the service usage in mind. So here we talk about service touch points. So anything that is a way for the customer to access the service, whether that's an app, whether that's the bike, whether that's a smart lock, whether that's the docking station, whether that's a digital or analog map. So the website, any of these elements are ways in which the customer comes in contact with this product service system. Next, please. So what does this also show us about services? That services are in incredible ways changing habits. So services affect behaviors and lifestyles, and they're crucial in changing habits and most importantly, dematerializing people's lives and creating social networks. So what do we mean by that? So the fact that we have the option to use a bike that is not ours, it is basically discouraging us from buying new things, which is obviously discouraging the use of raw natural resources. So in some ways, we are seeing a shift in how we use services. It's very much a different type of thinking, and it's a different type of paradigm where it is really dematerializing our lives, because we don't need to necessarily own all the things. We don't need to own a lawnmower. We don't need to own a ladder, right? We can always borrow or find different ways in which we can access that. So the access of what we need is part of the service. It's part of the value that we're willing to pay for. Next, please. So just here, I like to show this example as, again, something to kind of take us back to the times in which, I don't know if any of you remember the cassette cassettes and cassette players, and also how we saw the evolution from LPs to CDs to pods and even to streaming services such as Spotify and others today. So it's really seeing that evolution of dematerializing our lives in many ways, where we're still able to access music, but we don't necessarily need to own the products. And obviously, from a sustainability perspective, this has a lot of positive elements. Obviously, there are downsides as well, which are interesting for us to discuss and debate about what are the cultural and social implications of these changes in design. But they're important for us to understand. And this is what I encourage students always to look back at how we got to where we are now. What are the trends? What is the technology? How do we get to where we are at the moment? So as I said, also services around creating social networks. So what I like to show, Airbnb is quite a famous example, but the reason it is interesting is that in many ways it has disrupted the way the hospitality sector has evolved. So compared to before, when we used to only be able to go to hotels and have a very standardized experience, Airbnb really flipped hospitality on its head by allowing us to really experience another city, another place in a very different way. And another thing that was really important with this service case was that it allowed both the users and the hosts. So the guests and the hosts were able to have both roles, right? So all of us can be hosts and all of us can be users. So it really allowed guests, especially, to experience a city or a place in a very unique, very customized, very tailored way, rather than a very standard kind of hotel experience where you just kind of pay, you have your room, you check out, and you go, right? So the fact that we can have these creation of social networks where guests can perhaps meet the friends of the host and they can get very tailored recommendations of where to go and what to see has really disrupted the hospitality sector as a service ecosystem. So again, important for us to understand what were the implications of that. Why did this take place? What was the need and the gap in the market that this innovation fulfilled? And how can we use that thinking to think about things in a different way across other sectors? And here again, I show Spotify as again an example of the evolution of the dematerialization of music. So again, kind of continuing on what we were seeing with the bicycles, we can also see innovation in the car sharing businesses. So here on the left, you can see a company called Car2Go, which is a global service ecosystem. And what they did as well is that they really made simple, they really simplified. And again, part of creating a good user experience is making the experience seamless, right? And when it's seamless, you don't notice it, right? Which is what you want. But definitely when services are not designed well, you definitely feel when things are not seamless. So here we can see an example of a car sharing model that really tapped into how to make this as easy and efficient for the user. So you basically have the option of unlocking the car. You enter the car and you sit here and you basically have to tap a pin after you've assessed that the car is not damaged and there's no issues with it. Inside the car, you will also find a card that allows you to fulfill the gasoline. Or as we can see here on the right, it's the same service, but again, a step forward by being created as an electrical vehicle. So again, this is again showing how the service has really embraced the sustainable practices of today. So what is this showing us? This is showing us that we are having the functional thinking paradigm. And this is really important for us to understand. It is an approach that is claiming to reduce throughput in the economy by providing functions, not products. So if we are starting to think by functions instead of products, we're adopting a solution-oriented perspective. So what is it that we're designing here? We're not designing cars. We're not making cars better, but we are providing mobility, right? So mobility is the function. And then how we get from A to B doesn't have to be with our own car, doesn't have to be with our own bicycle. It can be through the use of these types of services where we only pay for access, where we only pay for the amount of time that we use it. And in that fee, one more important thing to say, in that fee, it basically it includes the maintenance, the registration, the insurance, the parking, etc., which is a lot of different costs that the user has to bear on an individual basis versus when you're part of a system like that. So what types of services do we have? Obviously, we have private services where we have direct payments, as with taxis, hotels, etc. But we also have public services where there's an indirect compensation. So things that we don't pay for directly, but are entitled to as part of living in certain countries. Healthcare, firefighters, all sorts of public services are all paid for through our taxes. And obviously we have volunteering or no monetary exchange services. So this is where you have charities in third sector. So again, important for us to understand what types of services exist. Now, if we shift our direction slightly to user experience, here we are looking at the end-to-end journey that a person has with the organization and all the touch points, some of which I've already mentioned. So it's extending far beyond the digital screen. It encompasses the entire emotional and functional experience of interacting with services, and this can include people, processes, technology, and products over time. So obviously, when we think about what is it about user experiences that we need to understand? So if we just take a glance at a bank, for example, that or a waiting room in a hospital, what is the experience that we need to understand here? So obviously, these experiences are not meaningful. These experiences are not pleasant. They have not been designed with the user or the customer in mind. So these are the types of pain points that we can identify within the system, and these are opportunities for us to either improve an existing service or completely innovate and reconceptualize a different service ecosystem. And here I like to show examples of, for example, in the financial sector, we have two banks here, the Deutsche Bank and the CareBanca, which are examples of services in the finance sector that are trying to move away from the standard traditional waiting in queue and standing to wait for the bank teller to kind of address your concern and so on. So here we can see banks really reconceptualizing their entire spaces. So it's not just about coming and standing in queue, it's about coming and being welcomed and having a drink and having a person really kind of dedicate their time and attention to your needs and what it is that you want as a client. And here on the right, we see again interior designing really shaping the way in which services are designed, which again affect the user experience. So again, creating these pods which provide again confidential, comfortable spaces for you to really have that one-to-one with the bank touch points, which is basically the bank employee. And this is again showing an innovation in the field. So again, really starting from the pain points, identifying opportunities for innovation, and then moving in creative ways. So user experience is that end-to-end set of customer experiences that adds value to a service. And this is typically viewed from the customer's perspective as a journey. So whereby you discover the service, you may purchase something, you have an experience that again, the service design has enabled as the conditions for certain interactions to take place, and how you participate in the service, how you are called upon to act in that is part of that user experience. And here we have examples again in hospitality. So how do we experience having a coffee, right? Here on the left, we can see coffee shops as being very strong social meeting points for certain demographics, right? So how does the design of this establishment enable or hinder those kind of interactions? And here on the right, again, we see one of the things that I think is interesting with Starbucks is that, when they ask you for your name, that was one of the ways in which they wanted to really try and personalize that experience. So rather than just handing you a cup of coffee, they ask for your name, they write it down. And so we all like to hear our names, right? So this is all based on psychology and research that is done purposefully from a business perspective in creating ways in which we really feel valued as a customer. And therefore that makes us keep wanting to come back, right? So another thing that's important to mention here is these are all the ways in which we map existing things, but how do we actually do service design? So I just want to give you again a short flavor, a quick insight into some of the ways in which we look at that within the program. So service design very much builds on this service design methodology and framework, which you can see here, which is by the Design Council. And it includes these four significant processes of discovery, definition, development, and delivery. And it is very much a process of constant diverging and converging. And each phase will have very specific service design tools. And here on the right, you can see a tool map, which shows the ways in which service design also borrows from other disciplines, but also tailors certain methods. And there's been a huge explosion of service design tools in the last decade or so, where we are seeing a lot of the tools being also improved or evolved to serve the different purposes within industry and academia. And within the program, again, we focus on very much identifying the pain points, looking at the customer journey. So we will use tools like customer journey mapping, stakeholder mapping, value proposition canvas, where we understand how the service responds well to the user's needs or not. And again, with stakeholder mapping, who is involved, what is their role, what is their interest, what is their influence, how do they improve a certain aspect of the service or not, and what is it that we can do in our strategizing in who else we can involve or who we need to take out, etc. So it is a very kind of systemic approach to problem solving. And here is an example of some of the tools we use within the service design strategy program for module, for example, where one of the tools is looking at value co-creation framework. So how does value co-creation happen? Who do we need to consider? Where does this take place? What is the frequency? What is the kind of relationship between the actors that we need to understand? And how can that improve the creation process for the user? And we also look at innovation opportunities within certain services. So how do we look at open innovation, or how do we look at closed innovation? And what is it about these approaches and processes that we can utilize and adopt as service designers in our strategizing approaches? So what is important to say here? What are the skills that our students learn by going through all these modules? So as I said, one very key thing is systems thinking. So that is very key to the way in which we think and do and learn around service design and user experience. Horizontal collaboration, so the platform designing, how do we do that? What does that mean? How does that sit within a collaborative economy? How do we creatively problem solve? How do we fast prototype? We also encourage students to do prototyping, really kind of testing ideas in a quick way, using models, Lego, wireframes, very simple ways in which we do that. How do we attune our students to a user-centered mindset? So how do we ensure that we're using the different tools and approaches in ensuring that what we are developing and designing is, really set and fit for purpose in terms of who we're designing for? And how do we also confidently navigate complexity? I think this is a really key thing to mention here as well. It's not just about doing practical tools, right? It's about really having that macro picture, but really having that macro view and navigating complexity confidently that we really kind of focus on in our program. And with that, we also, next slide, please. And with that, we basically see a lot of our students going on to take innovation consultancy roles, being design strategists, service designers, user interface designers, customer experience leads, or digital transformation within certain organizations and so on. And here I would just like to show as well the collaborative project, which I mentioned in the overview, is again an opportunity for students to really tackle real world experiences working with employers. The briefs are set by the companies in collaboration with academic staff. And this is really trying to build problem solving, strategic planning, communication skills that can directly advance the careers of students. And as you can see here, we also have students going on to take roles in KPMG, EY, Bank of England, just to name a few. So again, really working in top organizations as service designers has been a really excellent track record. Another thing I also said about London already is that apart from being a fantastic city, we are really blessed with an amazing array of companies that are working in service design, and we have close collaborations with those companies. As I said, we have experts coming to talk to us about what is going on in the industry. So we really try to stay abreast of what is happening both in the industry, and we try and see how that complements what we learn in the classroom. And here on the right, we can see government, digital services. Again, we have guest speakers coming from this very famous example where, again, the UK is one of the top countries in really having service design transform the ways in which citizen-led innovation is taking place. And we can really, again, benefit from a lot of the events and things that are happening in London as a result of that. And just to kind of give you a quick overview, service design is obviously an evolving field. It has really kind of boomed in the last 10 to 20 years. And we are seeing a fantastic evolution of that, not just being a small role within a company, but service designers really leading the way in which organizations are transformed, even seeing kind of chief design officers being new roles that designers are taking on rather than just kind of external consultants or in-house designers working in a small part of the company, but really taking the high roles of transforming companies in many different and interesting ways. And throughout the program, we do keep constantly coming back to what are the networks that we need to be aware of? How do we adopt social innovation and sustainability in our thinking and in our practices? What are the big companies that we need to understand? What are the kind of networks and conferences that our students need to be aware of and that they can try to attend in order to build a very kind of complex system around service design? And I will end on that in terms of giving you a bit of a flavor of what we look at, what we teach, and what we hope students learn. So another important thing I would like to share with you today as well is that we are 10 years in London, so we've had our 10th year anniversary this year, and part of that is that we're offering a 5,000 tuition fee discount for students who will be enrolling in September 26. There are also these other opportunities that you can explore if they're relevant to you, like the Global Impact Scholarship and the Chevening Scholarship, which I know some countries offer through the British Council. And please make a note of this link. I know this recording will also be available, so you can check out any further opportunities on the link on the slide at the moment. Just to kind of end, one of the things we are really proud of is we are seeing our students work in fantastic roles, and we keep in touch with them, and they do come to our alumni events. They do come to give talks as well and kind of share that journey of what Loughborough meant to them and how they built their careers and how we supported them throughout the different programs, throughout the different modules, and throughout the different additional. So we also have a future space at the London campus, which is a fantastic place with colleagues who really support students on help with your CV, career insights events, venture crawls where you go and look at big companies around London to understand how they work, what they do, meet people, and so on. So we really have a very strong academic as well as extracurricular offering, and I think that kind of really provides a unique setting for the students' learning. And I will leave it at that. Thank you so much for listening. I hope that was comprehensive and gave you a good overview of what the user experience and service design program looks like. And obviously, I am on standby for questions, and you have my email for any further questions, either to me or to Joe, who is the Institute Director.
Thank you, Ida. Really appreciate it. And also those of you that are watching, whether you be watching on demand or live, we did have a few technical problems up front. So if there are any issues or any problems and you can't see anything, or I'm not aware of any problems at all, but if there is, please email us webinars@postgradsolutions.com and we will send you a copy of this video. Ida, let me just have a quick conversation with you, if that's okay, just off the back of the conversation that you've just had with the students. Talk to me more about the ever-growing presence of user design and the various different opportunities because it's evolving all the time, isn't it? I mean, we've seen the different bikes in Beijing and in London. If you would ask someone 20 years ago if they'd be around, someone would have laughed at you. Where do you see it going in the next 10, 20 years? I know that's quite a broad question, but do you see much changing and evolving? Or is that down to the students really to create the next best thing?
So a couple of things. I think services are not new. The library, for example, is one of the oldest services. So why do we have a library? So that we don't all have to own all the books. We have one space and we all can basically borrow, right? So borrowing and lending are just one of the examples of service models of exchanging, bartering, lending, and so on. So service design itself is not new, but as a discipline, it has kind of evolved in the last 2 to 3 decades. So 20, 30 years ago, it was really starting to shape. And as I said, we could see that design was a very small part. Service design wasn't really understood. People really didn't know. I always had to explain what I mean by being a service designer. And we could see that evolution of really taking now we have banks that are basically employing lead service designers that are transforming the entire financial service
Mm.
sector. That's not a small thing, right? So we're not just looking at improving the look of a button on on an application. We are really looking at service design disrupting entire organizations and really flipping them to be more innovative in a very competitive market. So that's one very positive thing. So the other thing is that, as you could see on that little map that I showed, we can see it booming and popping up with service design chapters, service design global conferences, service design jams that are happening around the world, and then on a kind of online on a platform which I again encourage students to take part in. So we can see there's definitely a huge momentum in this field, which is why it is very important for us to have this program and offer this to students for prospective careers. In terms of what's going to happen in the future, I think one thing we have to be aware of is that we are on a planet with finite resources. And if you understand it from that perspective, services essentially allow us to access things that we don't necessarily need to own. So if we are a 7 billion population planet, how can service thinking enable us to create services using technology, and now obviously supported even more with AI, and creating immersive experiences, because brands have to differentiate. It's not enough to have a nice shop, right? For people to come and buy your things. It's an entire um, service system, right? Around the touch points. How do we access something? How do we buy something? How do we refer it to a friend? How do we come back to a certain brand and so on? So it's not only about services, it's about branding, it's about business, it's about technology, it's about being part of the experience economy, which is basically, we are now in the experience economy age, right? So I would say that is really an exciting field to be in. It is really something companies are looking for. And if I keep kind of looking at what are the roles that companies are recruiting, it is service design, systemic design, strategic design. It's all kind of in the top tiers. So I think we're really riding that wave, and I think it will continue as we come to understand that we have finite resources. How can we design services that can support what the planet has to offer, and how the 7 billion people can access that, basically?
What are the classes like then because of that? I would imagine it's quite a nice blend actually of youthful and probably more mature students because of it. And does that help the classrooms? Because obviously young 20-year-olds won't understand what like a cassette player was like when we showed it. But the older generation will, and therefore they'll have a different type of knowledge that a younger person will. So how important is that to the classroom levels of experience that that is there?
Yes, so it is quite an introductory level because we are aware that a lot of students will be coming from different disciplines. It's very rare that we will have someone who's done service design in their bachelor's. Um,
Hmm.
so we do kind of ease the students in a very gradual way, and then we gear it up towards the end to kind of very complex thinking, as I explained in some of the maps, methodologies, frameworks, and tools, and how we analyze and strategize around innovation opportunities and innovation in services overall. We do have students coming from really interesting backgrounds. We've had lawyers, we've had engineers, we've had people from healthcare, we've had people who are doing charity work. So both third sector, public and private sector, which is really interesting. And I often see people come to me and say, I've done this for a while and I feel I would really like not necessarily a 360 shift, but I would really like to have that systemic way of thinking to complement my undergrad. And that is what I say. Don't come to this just as this is a master's to tick, but think about how can this complement what you bring to the table, what unique set of skills and experiences you come with already, and then how can this unique combination create a professional that is going to be, someone to not reckon with in the future. So I think what we do is we really kind of complement that bachelor's undergrad background well, and because we are only a postgraduate campus, we really tailor it in a way to specialize so that the minute you come out of the master's, you're able to take on roles as innovation leads, strategic designers, UX, service design researcher, whatever.
Yeah, and can I just talk about the facilities for a moment? Because I was up visiting some of your colleagues in the Olympic Park a couple of weeks ago, and it was fascinating to see how it's almost a different way of life to your stereotypical London kind of vibe with the campus. It's quite relaxed, isn't it? It's quite relaxed, and obviously it's postgrad only, like you mentioned, so you've not got that hustle and bustle of 21-year-olds walking around, 20-year-olds kind of hungover, perhaps. It's a much more mature kind of feel, isn't it? And therefore, when academics are walking around, and you'll be able to answer this better than anyone, do you know your students quite well? Do you get on well with them? At the end of it, do you still pick their brains? Do they still pick your brains?
Yes, so I think teaching is always a two-way process. I never like to think of it as just one way. I think I learn a lot from the students, and I love the fact that we have students from all around the world. And when we discuss services, we really pick our brains. Well, how does a bike sharing service look in somewhere else? Or what is the innovation in healthcare currently happening in your country, right? So we really try to utilize the fact that we can explore it from different perspectives, because why not? We are in London, but we need to be aware of what's going on around the world, right? Um, I think to your question, the campus is relaxed. I think I love East London. I think it has a very, it is the most creative quarter in Europe, and we really are kind of privileged to be in the center of that. There's been a lot of new universities popping up. We have the VNA, we have a lot of other interesting things happening in the park. So it does feel vibrant. It does feel like, we're not in central London, but I think I wouldn't want to be in central London. It's too busy and too chaotic.
Yeah.
I think we have like the canal side and we have green spaces. So students will go for a run, or they will go for the gym, or they will grab drinks down by the canal. And it is a very relaxed atmosphere. And to your question, do I know my students? Yes, I definitely make an effort. I always try to really get to know them. And I always also offer opportunities for other things that I'm working on. If I can get students involved, I'm very happy to. Um, and yeah, I'm very happy to know that, I connect with my students on LinkedIn and they keep me in touch. We do keep in touch and they send me, hey, Ida, I'm working on this. I really want you to know that I've succeeded or been promoted. And I really am proud of that. I think it's like, it's not just a master's and off you go. It's kind of a beginning of a long-term relationship. And I do like to know what my students are doing and keep in touch, definitely.
Yeah, it's such a simple question, but I think students get lost in, doing their bachelor's and then perhaps going to a university and a campus, which is on the bigger side, let's say, and you can just be a number sometimes, which can be very difficult. So it's great to hear that. Ida, thanks for your time. That's gone by very, very quickly, nearly an hour already, which is great. If anyone has any questions, please reach out to Ida directly. You know, her LinkedIn profile was at the very first slide, actually, of this session. So I will make sure that everyone has a copy of this that is registered. And if you are watching on demand, if you're watching on our social media channels, head over to webinars at postgradsolutions.com. Send me an email, request anything that you wish, whether or not you want to be put in touch with Ida or whether you want to be put in touch with the university admission team, let us know. And don't forget those all important scholarships, the £5,000 scholarship, that is really as easy as it sounds as well. They are really giving you £5,000 off your tuition fees, or external opportunities through Chevening, Marshall, any other opportunities that you may wish to take up. Ida, thank you for your time, and everyone watching, thank you. Take care. Bye bye.